Once again at the Amherst kitchen table of Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed, Mr. Universe, wearing your Hampshire College Cognitive Science t-shirt with a picture of a brain on it, and furnishing me with some swag from Kainaat, which is the Urdu word basically for cosmos, and is a media organization that you front that was presented in front of all of the astronomers of planet Earth at the International Astronomical Union conference that happened in South Africa that you just got back from a week or so ago. This is the organization that we mentioned before that killed Pluto. Did they kill anything else this time in South Africa, astronomically speaking? One of our other favorite astronomical bodies now no longer planets or things?
No, they do actually a lot of good stuff. And so a couple of things I should mention. First of all, our organization, or the one that I founded, that's a non-profit. So don't think that, that this is sort of like whatever, Netflix or Amazon. No, this is a small non-profit that we do, and we create videos in Urdu and English. In fact, this conversation also shows up on YouTube.
Yeah, I have lots of friends on Facebook now all of a sudden that are from Pakistan. I'm big in Pakistan.
Okay, but what I want to talk about is I attended first week actually of this General Assembly of International Astronomical Union. And you are absolutely right that in 2006, this became infamous because on the last day of this General Assembly, they voted to, I would say, they demoted Pluto. Although, they say, no, we never demoted Pluto. We just categorized this as a dwarf planet, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's not true. Yeah. They demoted Pluto because we don't talk about Jupiter and others as gas giants or others or giant planets. No, we say those are planets.
Yeah.
Right?
It used to be my very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. Now it's my very educated mother just served us nothing.
Nothing, exactly. Okay, that set aside. Okay, let me get my anger down. It was a fantastic meeting. This was the 32nd General Assembly of... This is the largest gathering of astronomers in the world. And this one was a particularly interesting one because this happened in Cape Town, South Africa. For the first time, this General Assembly took place on the continent of Africa. And it was a big deal. It was wonderfully organized. It was such a joy to be there. There were all these posters everywhere, and it said sort of it is time for Africa. And it was such a lovely experience. And the other thing I should mention before I go into the specifics, I want to highlight some of the specific things. But it's almost unfortunate that not many American astronomers attend this. And as a graduate student, and then later on as a postdoc as well, I never went to this General Assembly of International Astronomical Union. Most American astronomers go to American Astronomical Society, which is a great meeting. It's almost as big as this one, but it's mostly American astronomers. There is a lot of science in there. There are a lot of big results that come out. But we are rarely encouraged to go to this IAU, or International Astronomical Union General Assembly. And I think that's a shame because it is you really see what is happening internationally. And there are all these various differences in terms of countries, in terms of astronomy, in terms of science, but also such a wonderful cultural diversity that you get to see, but all united by astronomy. So I really hope, and the reason I know that it's still not happening for American astronomers to going over there was, I think there was only one other astronomer from the Valley, James Lowenthal, who was there.
Mr. Dark Skies himself from Smith College.
And I should mention, he is now a big honcho. He is there is a lot of bureaucracy in there, but he is the president of Commission B7 of the International Astronomical Union.
What is B7? It's a vitamin that's very good.
I'm glad that you asked that question. No, this is for the protection of existing and potential observatory sites. And so this is the commission that takes into account light pollution, takes measures like how you can reduce it, and so on and so forth. So it's actually right. It fits into his commission. He's also a member of the IAU Executive Committee Working Group on Dark and Quiet Skies. And if I can connect that in, this was actually a big push in this year's International Astronomical Union General Assembly. There were a lot of sessions on how to prevent light pollution and how to prevent dark skies, but also the satellite constellations that are going up in the sky. And this is a serious concern for especially large telescopes that are about to come on. One of them is Vera Rubin telescope, which is going to be surveying large portions of the sky every night, but it is also very sensitive. And astronomers are really concerned about satellites like Starlink.
Which is Elon Musk's, it's a constellation of little satellites that are providing internet across the globe.
And there are others as well that are coming up. And so the number of satellites roaming the skies is actually growing really fast, meaning to say there used to be a few hundred a few years ago, and now the numbers are going into thousands, and soon they will be in tens of thousands. And because the way they streak across the sky, and you have very sensitive telescopes. On the one hand, our ability to detect faint things is growing, but on the other hand, you also have these satellites passing in the sky. Their numbers are growing, and they are going to just mess up our ability to actually do astronomy. So this is a pretty serious thing. If people think, hey, we have James Webb Space Telescope, why don't we put a telescope up there? Well, remember, we have one telescope that is that far away, and you cannot build really big telescopes in space. So you do need ground-based astronomy, and it's not just in the optical or the visible spectrum. You also have radio observatories, and you can have satellites that can actually interfere with radio waves as well, including their communication, including their instruments and so on and so forth. So this is a very important thing for astronomy. And again, International Astronomical Union deals with this because it's an international problem, that you have to have quiet skies, radio quiet, and you have to have night sky that is protected. But somebody has to argue for it. Otherwise, as you can imagine, commercial interests can take over.
And that somebody is Smith College astronomer James Lowenthal, our friend.
One of them. And I should mention another person who's really involved, Connie Walker. She's a Smith alum. So there is sort of there is a connection then there. But I think that's a really important thing. And not just that, but because we have been talking about human settlements on the moon. Well, so recently there was a working group that has been formed again at the International Astronomical Union, which actually is concerned about radio quiet aspect on the moon because people are planning satellites over there. There are some Chinese relay satellites already there, but there are also plans for example, mining over there, and that's going to create problems for that. So you have to look forward, but somebody has to speak up for and protect these things which are world's heritage. And so this is the group that does that, and this is just one of the ways where International Astronomical Union plays a huge role.
You were there, Mr. Universe, Hampshire College's Salman Hameed, to talk about and teach some of the other astronomers how to teach astronomy, specifically to the Southeast Asian world, I would say, and in other languages other than English.
Yeah, so there weren't many people that talked about videos because we create videos for audience in South Asia, in Urdu, for kids and for grown-ups too. And now, in fact, we are expanding into English. So this is another example where our kids' videos in a couple of months are going to be in Urdu/Hindi, which is understood in Pakistan and India, but also they will be in English. And but our goal is to really focus on the global south, or the developing world as it was called, because that's where high quality videos are missing. So we want actually to target that and to highlight astronomy in those areas. And so so this is what happens at the International Astronomical Union, that we had a poster over there, and there were people that were really interested in it from Namibia, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Botswana, Nepal, Vietnam, and so many different places. People were like, oh, is it going to be in English? We are really interested in doing that. So our new channel, the English channel, is going to be launched probably in October. But what we are planning on doing, and I should mention that I'm the only one for this Kainaat Studios that is in the US, because rest of the people are in Pakistan or in India. But what we want to do is to actually, every episode, we want to highlight sort of like, somebody from this global south, from, say, for example, from Botswana or from Ethiopia or from Nepal, and what constellations are called in their culture, what astronomy is going on, what space programs, because, for example, some places have these space programs in there, what is going on, what kind of concerns are there in terms of the protection of night sky. There were sections in IAU about astrotourism, so there are a lot of these places where the light pollution hasn't gone to extreme, but people are trying to protect that, and in fact, there is something called astrotourism where they can actually take people to experience dark skies, because for many places, you don't see the sky ever in your life. So you have to go, just like to go for a safari or other places, you go and see and experience dark skies. So that is also happening. So we want to highlight those things as well. And just to connect that, at the International Astronomical Union, they have these different divisions. One of them is, or the office, one is the Office of Astronomy for Development, OAD. The astrotourism stuff comes under that. We got a grant actually to do some of these videos. One of the grants was from this IAU OAD Office for Astronomy, Office of Astronomy for Development. And their argument is, their big thing is that astronomy for a better world. In fact, this was one of the slogans that was there at IAU, because astronomy, you can imagine, can be used for a gateway to build curiosity and to build interest in STEM fields or in the sciences. You can also think about astronomy for tourism purposes that actually can build economy. You can also think about just broader education. But also, which was very interesting, was they also have a segment on astronomy for mental health. And that is because, and Monte, you and I have talked about this cosmic perspective. Sometimes sort of like, you think about your problems and you really get wrapped in there. But sometimes it actually helps to think about the scales, the cosmic scales. And so there was, in fact, there was a talk about that as well. And this Office of Astronomy for Development actually have this section on astronomy for mental health. But all of this put together, this falls under astronomy for a better world. I think that was wonderful. But you also have Office of Astronomy for Education, which deals with, as you can imagine, for education purposes, for astronomy education. But you have Office of Young Astronomers, but also something that is much closer to us and what we deal with, and that is for Astronomy Outreach. So that is building interest in astronomy, building curiosity, and that is something that we actually collaborate with them also for our Kainaat channels as well. Office of Astronomy for Education. So this promotes education, astronomy education in there. And of course, dark skies I've already mentioned. There is also at the IAU conference, it happened to be on the International Women's Day on August 9th. So there were a lot of sessions on women in astronomy and how to sort of like, bring in there. So if I can just pull all of these things together and just mention that the opening ceremony and the closing ceremonies, those were all great, but I was there at the opening ceremony. First of all, there was amazing performances. There were amazing dances, Zulu dances in there, which was really refreshing and cool. Yeah. Because again, oftentimes we don't see that stuff in sort of like astronomy conferences and things like that. That was really cool. But the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, this is the South African Minister, Blade Nzimande, gave a talk. And I just loved his talk. He himself is a professor as well, so it's Professor Blade Nzimande. And his talk really brought things together, because one of the things he talked about was like COVID-19. He said that it reminded people that you cannot just have things in isolation. You cannot have vaccines and you hold off to it and say, oh, we don't care about the rest of the world. And so you cannot leave behind the rest of the world because we are all connected together. So his point was that they are doing this conference, they are hosting this conference in South Africa, but it is on behalf of Africa. And that was absolutely true at the conference, that it was sort of broader. But with this COVID-19 example, he connected it to he says, it ain't science unless it is truly global. You cannot leave people behind. So I thought that was actually a really good way of thinking about the lessons from International Astronomical Union and to think about why global science matters. And then he also talked about gender imbalances in terms of education, and then he connected that and he says it ain't science unless women are centrally involved. And he mentioned sort of like, that he grew up in sort of like, his mother and his sisters, and he says he was a mama's boy. So I think that was actually really wonderful. And then his last one was when he talked about that astronomy and sciences, natural sciences, they have to talk to humanities and the social sciences. And you can imagine, especially with our issues regarding saving the world, climate change and other things, how to talk to people about these things, how to listen to other people. And we also have issues regarding telescopes, like for example in Hawaii and other places where those are controversial issues. You will have issues regarding astronomy and science on the moon clashing in with other ethical issues, but also commercial interests. So he said that astronomy, just like all natural sciences, he says, it ain't complete science unless it interacts with social science and humanities. And he concluded by saying it ain't science unless it is multidisciplinary. And I think those three aspects of science, global, women's being centrally involved, and being multidisciplinary, I think that was such a perfect encapsulation of the spirit of International Astronomical Union meeting. So I just loved it in that sense. Okay, and just being there, it was just wonderful. There was Radio Astro as well. You are on radio, but there was a constant sort of like, they had a booth over there, and they were they were interviewing astronomers at a consistent basis. A lot of people who wanted to do science communication. So
we'll have to go do the show from there 3 years from now. It's every 3 years that they meet in Rome in 2027, right?
2027 Rome, 2030 Chile. So that was really announced. So those things are great. But one last thing. They also passed a few resolutions. One was about dark skies, that International Astronomical Union should actually deal with. They are authorized to deal with issues regarding dark skies and quiet skies. But also there were two other resolutions regarding time on the moon, because we need to figure out how do you coordinate time in there. So again, International Astronomical Union had this resolution as well about establishing a coordinate system on the moon, time coordinate system, and also to work with international bodies to figure out the standardization of time, because time ticks differently, slightly differently on the moon than on the Earth. We talked about it a while back because of general theory of relativity, but we all need to figure out what standard we are using, otherwise accidents can happen on the moon. So far, it hasn't been the case because there hasn't been much traffic on the moon and people use Earth time, but over there, then we will have to use moon time. So there was another resolution in there.
So then your favorite TV shows will be broadcast in Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Moon time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that would be, lunacy.
Cool.